Hello and welcome to this week's training stream. Today we are going to take a look at creating some custom filters in Substance Designer that we're going to use in Substance Painter. And so we're going to start with just a quick example so we can see what we're doing here. Okay, so first let's just take a look at an example scene. So here I have this asset. And let's just come over to the top here of our layer stack. And let me just adjust my window here just for a second. Be right back. Okay, so all right, we have this asset. Let's add a little bit of a kind of a damage edgeware effect to this. So one way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to come over here to the top of my layer stack. Just add a fill layer. And here in my materials tab, I'm just going to select a preset metal here. So here we have a metal. We'll give it a little bit of roughness. And now I'm just going to come in and mask this guy. So we'll add a black mask. And of course here the next step would be to add a generator. And so now that I have this in place, I'm going to add just this metal edgeware generator. So here we go. I have this and of course we have the effect. Now this is working for me because here in my additional maps I have things like my normal map, ambient occlusion, and curvature, and these three maps are utilized mainly here by this generator to produce this edge wearing effect. And so since I then have these maps that I need, so that's great. We have everything that we need. So let's disable this and let's take a look at the situation where I want to paint some new data or some new information onto this. So now I'm just going to create a standard layer. And I'm going to come over here to my material, and here, let me just set this up by default here, just so you can see what this would kind of look like. So here we have just our full material, and I'm going to paint. I'm going to use some of our new normal textures here that ship with Substance Painter 2 to add some additional information. So one of the ways that I do that, like I said, is I create a standard layer. I'll come over here to my materials, and I'm just going to disable all these channels. So I don't need color, rough, and metal, and so on. I'm just working with normal. And just for a little bit of context with this right now, for this particular example, I'm just using this metal rough. So if I come over here to my viewer settings, you'll notice here that my shader is just PBR metal rough. Okay, so that's what we're kind of working with here. And we come over to our texture set. I want to point out the fact here that I actually have this normal channel. Now, within Substance Painter 2, we kind of made a few changes to the way that we're kind of working with normal data, and we make it a lot easier to actually create and edit normal information with kind of brush-based tools, which is great. So here you'll notice that I have this normal channel, and when you create a new Substance Painter project, this normal channel will be enabled by default. You can actually, like in my case, I had this opened up in a different project, so I actually just had to click this plus button and just add the normal channel because it wasn't there already. Now, something else I want to show you here with this normal mixing. Notice that we have this setting here for combined and replace. Now, here, like I said, I have a normal map that was baked, already applied. Now, if I have a normal channel and the normal mixing is set to replace, notice that my normal information is now gone from the viewport. What I'm basically saying to Substance Painter is, hey, this normal information that I'm getting ready to paint on this layer, I want it to replace, hence the setting replace. I want it to just overwrite everything that I'm doing. Now, most cases, you're not going to want to do that. So we're going to keep it at the default here of combine. That means we're going to use the normal data in our additional map along with any normal information that we paint here in our layer stack. So just to give you a little context on how that works. Alright, so back to the task at hand where I was going to start to paint some actual normal information. So like I said, I've disabled all my channels except for normal. I come over here to my textures tab and I'm going to grab this guy here. This is a pretty cool texture. And I'm just going to left click, drag and drop, and just place this here on this normal channel to apply it. So here is my normal. So now I'll just kind of zoom in here on the viewport. And if I hit this button here, you can see that I basically have my alpha. And you can actually come in and adjust kind of like the fade of this. This is, if you use ZBrush to paint alpha information, This reminds me of the ZBrush setting for alpha, the radial fade, which is really nice. So notice here that I've got a nice fade around. If we just kind of look here in the 3D viewport, I got a nice fade around my normal. And if I hold down the control key and move my mouse up and down, I can interactively adjust this hardness. So in this case, I want to set the hardness all the way up to 1 because that's what I want to work with. Now also notice that my alpha here is this circular shape. And that works great because the alpha that I have right now is circular. But if I were to grab a different alpha that's not circular, so for instance, let me just maybe try grabbing this guy here. And again, here, let's just go back over to our normal and let's replace this. You'll notice here around the circle of my brush tip that it's kind of cutting off the edges there. It's kind of rounding those edges, and I don't want that. So you can use the alpha, and like I said, to interactively adjust that hardness to get kind of a nice radial fade. But if that's not working for you, then you can just hit this button here to close the alpha, get rid of it altogether, and now it's just going to use the full stamp. So notice, if you kind of look at the viewport here, I've got that kind of circular dotted line that kind of shows that brush tip. Notice that the alpha is kind of moving or extending out beyond that. So that's probably what we want to do. So again, going back over to my alpha, let's add this guy in, and let's just paint, let's just stamp this detail down. So that's great. I've now stamped some additional detail. But where this starts to become a pain is that, okay, I've added this, but I also want to utilize that edge wear that I had. So let's go back and use this edge wear. Now we've enabled it, but look, my stamp here is not taking any of that edge wear filter into consideration. And that is because the data that I'm stamping here, this normal data, it's not contained within this additional map, and we don't have ambient occlusion or curvature that's derived from this normal data. So if we come back to our metal edge wear, again in the image inputs, notice that it's being driven by this curvature, and in our case curvature and ambient occlusion only, not normal. But you'll notice that this data that I've placed in here, it's not being represented. So what I would have to do, or what I used to do, is, first go through the entire asset here and just paint everything down that I want. Then I would do an export textures, export out just my normal map, bring it back in here to my additional map, and then rebake the textures. So while we're on that topic, I do want to just tell you another tip while we're here in case you didn't know this. But let's say I didn't have any of these other textures. In our case, let's only focus on here. Let's get rid of world space, this ID, and position. So really all we really care about is these three maps. And let's say that I just went through that process where I painted all this information and I baked out my normal map and I imported it back into my project and placed it here in this additional map. Now, let's say that I want to take that normal map and I want to create an ambient occlusion and curvature based on that. Well, I can do that inside the Bake Textures options. So if I click my baking button and I come over here and I choose ambient occlusion and curvature, and in my high definition mesh, if I just leave this, if I just remove this guy, so let's select this and remove this. So notice here I'm getting this little warning here, but don't worry about that. As long as there's a normal map placed here in this additional map slot, it's going to go ahead and bake the AO and the curvature. Basically, it's going to convert it from this normal map. So that's kind of a tip if you ever need to convert, like AO and curvature from an existing normal map. Now, let's say that I did that. I finally have my additional outputs, and I can use those here in my edge generator and so on. Okay, so you can see that that's a huge, roundabout process just to get this detail like we want it. So what I want to focus on in this training is how we can create a substance filter, basically a filter that we're going to create in Substance Designer that's going to allow us to have this type of functionality here within Painter. And it shows, basically, we're going to look at how you would do this, how you use Designer to do this, and then it also shows how we're using Designer to further extend Painter, add new functionality to it, give Painter the ability to do something that's that you can't do just by default. So let's take a look at how this would work. So let's come back over to this layer and let's just remove it and let's just start over. Okay, so let me just grab this layer stack here and let me just create a standard layer. We've got our brush, and again I'm just going to start to paint these two strokes down. So we've got this information. So what I'm going to do is come over here to my filters tab, and right here without an icon whatsoever, I have this filter that I created. And I'm going to apply it just so I can show you, what it is we're actually going to be creating. So let's come over here to add filter. Now I could just click this button here and it's a blank spot here, so I can add it through here. But as soon as I do that, notice now that we have basically, the same thing. We have the damage filter, so I can adjust it and so on. Let's just adjust our grunge amount, just things like that. So now I've basically added this filter that's processing this normal information that I'm painting. It's on the fly creating the ambient occlusion and curvature for me within this filter, and then it's going to output that. So now when I come over to my object and I start to paint, I'm actually painting with this awesome damage effect already there. And if I come over to my textures, let's go back to my normal here. Yeah, already got it enabled. Let's grab something else like maybe this guy. So here's a whole completely different texture. Boom, place it down. Edge wear is already working. Again, we'll grab another one of these guys. Edge wear. So I can now also go back to the filter and dynamically change how much the wearing is being controlled and so on. I could also come in and change the type of material. We'll cover this in just a little bit when we actually start to do this within the filter. So now we have basically two types of filters that we can adjust. We've got our grunge amount that's part of the original asset, and then we have basically our damage filter that's part of the new details that we're painting. Now, in order to do this, notice that we didn't have to bake anything. We could just work with it all interactively here inside of Painter. And that just kind of shows, the true power of how we can use substances, not just as materials, but we can use them as utilities and tools to further extend things like Substance Painter. Okay, so now what we're going to do for the rest of this of the training here is take a look at how we create a filter like this. I want to show you exactly step by step how to do this. And as you'll see, it's actually pretty easy. All right, so let's jump over to Substance Designer. Basically, here's the structure. This is the little bit of nodes that we need. So as you'll see, this is actually pretty simple. So like I said, let's do this from scratch. So let's come over here to File, New Substance. So we're starting a new substance. And over here in our graph templates, we have a few options. Now, there are a couple that exist. There's one question that just came in here. Could you show again how you created the brush? Yes, absolutely. I'll come back to that once we jump back over into Substance Painter, and I'll do that from the get-go when we start to create this. But for now, we'll just go through and create the filter, but we're going to go back into Painter here before the training's done. Okay, so like I said, we have these templates, and you have a couple of these guys. So notice this one here is Painter Filter Specific. And what that actually means is it's talking about these outputs. So if we come over here and look at the graph outputs, you can see that we have base color, rough, metal, and height. So these are the outputs it's going to create for us. If we came over here to specific with additional maps, it's basically the same thing, but basically it gives you just input channels for additional input maps. We're not going to utilize that, so we're not worried about it. And then we have here one that's for a painter generator. Notice that it just gives us a single output. The reason why you have that is because when you generate something like a generator, here, let me come back over here to Painter and show you this. So there is one other thing I just want to bring your attention to. The difference of when you come over here and you add a generator and you add a filter. These are kind of two different things that we're creating. When you add a filter, you're basically working with multiple color channels, like we're going to be doing, like base color, roughness, normal, and so on. When you work with a generator, you're only creating a mask. So this generator is actually producing this mask for us. So I roll over the mask, and you can see it kind of gives me this kind of enlarged thumbnail, and you can see that that's the mask it was generating. That's why here in Designer, when we look at Painter Generator template, it just shows output, meaning that it's just going to just output one single, and I'll say output again, just going to give us one of those that's just going to represent grayscale information for our mask. So kind of a long story there for these templates, because all we really want to work with here is this Painter specific for these guys. Okay, so now that we have that, let's just give our graph a name here, and we'll just call this damage filter, and just so it's a little different, I'll just call it example. And let's see what else. Our size mode. By default, now I've already done this, so it was kind of set, but you might see this set at absolute. I'm going to go ahead and set this relative to parent, which means that this substance is going to get its resolution based on the host application. So let's jump right over here to Substances Painter one more time, and you'll notice that we have this size. So if I change this size, so if I move this up to say something like 4K, now it's going to generate, and you'll notice here, and I'll kind of zoom in, I kind of have some poor resolution because these UVs are very small. But notice as soon as I increase that resolution to 4K, I'm not sure if you could see it here in the stream, but what I'm seeing here in my viewport is this data that I'm actually creating, this effect that I'm creating, the substance, it's being regenerated now at 4K. And the reason it's being able to do that is because, like I said, we've set this to relative to parent. So one question here, so the filter is destructive. No, it's not. It's actually non-destructive. Again, that's our size mode here set to relative to parent. So whatever we create here within our graph, like I said, it's going to get its resolution based on the host application. So back in the host application, whenever we change our resolution, so here in this case, let's set it all the way down to something like 512, the actual effect of what we've created is being completely recomputed by the substance engine, since it's a substance, and it's being redrawn now at this 512. So again, if I take this up to, here, let's do this. Let's turn this guy off so we don't see any of this other stuff as a distraction. And now I'll zip this up to 4K here. We're not resizing the texture at all. What we're doing is we're telling the substance engine to completely regenerate those nodes and create us an actual 4K output for the outputs that we're going to be creating in our substance. It'll make more sense once you actually start to see it in Designer. But yeah, so the answer to that is no, it's not destructive. It's a completely non-destructive workflow. All right, let's jump back over here to Designer, and we basically have everything set up. Like I said, we're going to keep our size mode here set to relative to parent. All right, and we'll click OK, and now we have our new substance. So let's look at what substance, let's look at what these nodes were created. We have basically two sets here. Now we have base color, roughness, metallic, and height. And then we have it again, base color, roughness, metallic, and height. The ones here on the left are input nodes, and the ones here on the right are output nodes. And so what we can do with this is we can take as input, let's jump back over here to Painter, as input any of the information here from our layer stack. So let's just get rid of what we just painted here. Think about it like this. We've created this fill layer, and this fill layer basically has channels of base color, roughness, and metal. So it has this information here. And we're going to take this base information and we're going to basically suck that into our filter, process that information, and then we're going to push it back out. So we're going to grab the layer stack channels, we're going to process them, we're actually going to add another material on top of them, and then we're going to push it all back out as one single material. And that's what this allows us to do here with these inputs. So this is going to be the inputs, meaning our substance Painter layer stack, and then the outputs is what's going to be shown back here in Painter, is what this is going to be shown here. So in this layer, this filter is going to output this damage that you see here, which is going to be a material on top of what it's taking in as input, which in our case, like I said, it could be, in our case, it's just this one single fill layer, but it could be, 15, 20 different layers. Let's jump back over here to Designer, and let's just continue on with our process. Okay, so like I said, the first thing that we want to do is we want to work with the data that's coming in from the Substance Painter layer stack. And like I said, we have that here. So what I like to do is I like to basically, since we're going to be compiling another material on top of that, which is going to, that second material is going to be like our edge damage that we're creating, we're going to want to basically blend two sets of materials together. And what I like to do is take the inputs and just compile them down into one node. And I do that with the base material node. So I start to type in base. Here's my base material node. And I'm not going to set anything on this node. I'm basically just going to use it as like a pass-through container, basically. And so I'll come over here to my user-defined maps, and I'm going to enable base color. I'm going to enable roughness. metallic, and height, because those are my inputs. So now let's just make the connections here. Now you'll notice here that I'm getting into the situation where I'm trying to make this connection and it won't let me. What's happening here is this: I have this usage mismatch. So if you ever get into this situation, that's happening because of this mode that we're in, compact material mode. And notice here you've got this 1, 2, and 3. These basically represent the 1, 2, and 3 key on your keyboard, so you can just use those to toggle. So what I'm going to do is just hit 1 on the keyboard. This basically expands all the channels, and now I can make this connection. Whoops, wrong connection though. Let's grab metallic and put that here, and let's grab height and place that into here. So now I'm going to tap the 3 key on the keyboard again, and it's just basically taking me into compact mode. So you notice all those channels are just one entity now, or one output. So at this stage we've taken all of the inputs and we've just almost like a box, we've just placed them into this box that we're going to use. So now this node here represents the layer stack from Substance Painter. Alright, now we're also going to be working specifically with normal information. And notice I don't have that, so I need to create that node. So I'm going to hit the space bar, and I'm going to start to type in input, and I have 2 options here: input color and input grayscale. I'm going to use this input color. So let's bring this guy over here, and then I'm going to hit the space bar one more time, and I'm going to start to type output. And let's grab an output, and we'll bring this guy over here. Now, for the usage of this output, and let me double check here. What do I have? Height, normal, no. I was just making sure I didn't have it by chance. So here in my usage, I'm just going to set this to normal. And for the identifier, let's just give this the name normal. So now I have these 2 guys, and I'm just going to connect them. So what I'm saying here, let's go back over to Painter. When I'm on this layer and I'm painting the stroke here, so you'll notice again I'm just over here and I'm painting this information, I'm utilizing the normal channel. And so what I'm doing with that normal input is the data that I just painted here, that stroke I just placed down, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to process that, or I'm going to use that data you'll see inside the filter to get some information from it. And then I want to make sure that my filter passes that information that I just placed down here back out to the layer stack. And that's why we did this direct connection. So this is our stroke of our normal, and we want to make sure that it goes straight out. So there we have that connection. So like I said, just recap, we've got our layer stack here. That's our base layers, base color, rough, metal, and height. We're using those here. We're taking any normal information that we're painting and we're just outputting it straight out back out to the layer stack. We're bringing it in and we're passing it right back out. Okay, so like I was saying earlier when we kind of went through this demonstration, in order for these generators to work, we need to be able to derive some information from them. We want to grab ambient occlusion and we want to grab curvature. Now, we don't have that information when we paint our stroke. We're only painting that normal that normal data. And we need to get that. We don't want to bake it, of course, because that just takes a whole lot of time. So now what we're going to do is here in our filter, we're going to take that normal information and we're going to create on the fly ambient occlusion curvature data that we're going to use. So in order to do that, let's just for now, just so we can see, because notice right now we're working with all that kind of empty stuff and it's kind of hard to see what we're doing. So what I'm going to do, just so I can kind of see something here, let's just grab our shape node. This node's good for, well, creating shapes. So we'll come over here to our pattern and I'm going to grab this brick and I'm going to scale it down a little bit. This is just so that I can see. I'm going to give it a little bit of bevel edge. This is just so that I can have something to work with. Let's grab this guy and let's copy and paste it one more time. And then on this guy, let's change the X value here like this. We're going to want to invert this, so I'm just grabbing an invert grayscale. And we're going to blend these 2 guys together. So we'll grab this guy and this guy. Just move them out of the way. Let's come back over to our blend node and let's set this to multiply. So here's kind of like a shape that we get. Let me adjust my Y value here and let me just bevel that edge a little bit like this. So here's just kind of like a shape. So now if I take that and I run it through our normal node, I can generate normal map information. Now it's hard to see. Let me take my intensity up to something like really high just so we can see it. So, okay. All of this that I just did was just so that we could have something to represent this, because right now it's blank and we can't see what we're doing. Okay, so one question coming in. There's a way to set Painter up to have normal channel in the texture by default. Yes, actually, it does that. You'll see when we actually create the next. You'll see that when we go in and we create the project. So here, let me just check something here with the chat window. Okay, I'm just doing a test message here. I just got an error of saying it wasn't able to connect the chat, so I just want to make sure that's working here. All right, so like I said, we just went through this step here just so that we could have, just some normal information to work with. And so like I said, we want to take that normal data that we're created through the paint stroke, and we want to create ambient occlusion from that, and we want to create some curvature from that. So we can do that curvature here with just the curvature node. So I'm just going to start to type in curvature, and here's my curvature node. And if I just take my normal and just plug this guy in, you can see that it just generates curvature information for me. And here in this case, I might take this up to something like, say, 15 or so. This is fine here. So you can see the type of information that we're getting. Now I have that curvature, and you can see that was really simple to do. We also need that ambient occlusion, so let's create that information. So I'm going to start to type in ambient occlusion, and then here you can see that we have this ambient occlusion node. So this guy here specifically takes height. So we need to convert our normal map. So I'm going to hit the space bar one more time. I'm going to start to type in normal, and we get all these normal nodes that we can work with. And here we have one called normal to height. So I'm going to use this node. So this node takes our normal map, we'll place this guy in, and here you can see it's generating some height information. And we can adjust this, just some of these values. In this case, I'm just going to leave it at default. Now I'm going to take this height and plug it here into our ambient occlusion, and now we were able to create some ambient occlusion. So here we can do things like adjust our spreading, and adjust some of our frequencies here. So I'm going to make just a few adjustments. Just so we can get a better view of what's happening. Now these adjustments that I'm making, this would be something that we would want to expose, and we can do that, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But what we have so far is these two pieces of information, these two pieces of data that we need. We have curvature and we have ambient occlusion. Alright, so I just wanted to kind of show you what we were doing there with that. So now that we have that, instead of using my little sample here, I'm just going to go ahead and plug this guy in like this, and let's plug this guy into here like this. So we'll just adjust these two guys, and here's the two nodes that we need. We'll move this guy up like this. So we're going to use these guys in just a little bit. Alright, so the next thing that we need to do, let's see, for our height, let's go ahead and start to blend our material. So one of the things I'm going to do for, actually, let me step back here. Let me not make that connection just yet because I want to explain the generator. Let me plug this guy back in for a second. Alright, so the next thing we're going to want to do is start to create our dirt generator. So I'm going to start to type in dirt, and then here I have this, well no, let's not do dirt. Let's actually use the same one. Let's use metal edgeware. So I'll start to type in metal, and here you can see that I have this metal edgeware node. So if we come over to this guy, and the node here is, whenever you see a green node like this, it just means some channels are collapsed. So I'm just going to tap 1 on the keyboard to expand these channels. And now you can see this guy takes in curvature, ambient occlusion. Also, it can utilize world space and position. I'm not going to use those. So I'm going to take my curvature and plug that guy in. and I'm going to take my ambient occlusion and plug this guy in. And so here you can see the mask that's starting to get generated. So what we're doing here, if I just jump back over here to Designer, and we look at this mask, this metal edge wear, if I just again mouse over this, you can see that thumbnail. That's showing the mask. We're basically kind of mimicking this workflow, but we're doing it inside of our substance. All right, so here we're going to jump back over to Designer. So now that we have our metal edge wear, what we're going to want to do is take the nodes that we have and do some material blending. So like I said early on, these input nodes represent the layer stack that we have in Painter thus far. So it's going to be, you know, the material that we have on our object already. And we want to layer you know, a new material on top of that that's going to represent basically our damage. So what we're going to do is come over here, and I'm going to hit the space bar, and I'm going to start to search for this node that I use often called the Material Color Blend. So we have this node in place, and now I need to set up a few options. First, let me just check something here on the stream. Just want to make sure, I'm just doing a quick check here on my bandwidth. Does everything look like it's going okay? Just send me a quick message here in the chat window. I just want to make sure that I'm not dropping out too many frames here. Is everything viewing okay? Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, my chat window just died on me here, and I was afraid I was kind of losing some information there. Okay, all right, sorry about that, everybody, for that interruption. Keep moving here. So like I said, we're going to want to start to kind of blend some material information in. And again, just so I can be like super clear on what's going on, because it's important to understand that. And this was kind of like a real kind of, I'll say, a light bulb moment for me when I kind of realized how this was working. Like I said, when I'm talking about that layer stack and the input coming in, if we look at our example, I'm talking about this material here. So this could be, like I said, 15, 20 different layers. It doesn't matter. In our case, it's just this one fill layer. So this represents a material, and we want to basically overlay another material on top of this, okay, like we have here. This in our case, is going to be like kind of this metal material on top. And so what we're going to do, or what these nodes represent, is kind of that fill layer that we have so far. And it's going to be comprised down into this one single node. Now, we're going to use this mask here that we've just generated from our normal information here. So, again, back at Painter, on our layer stack, remember that with this filter, we want to be able to paint this layer information. You know, we're going to take that, and we're going to generate on the fly a mask, as we're doing here, and we're going to do that through converting that normal into curvature and AO, and we're going to use that to drive this material color blend. So material color blend is a really nice node in that it takes a material as input and a mask. So the material that we want to take as input is going to be, well, what we've been working with. It's going to be that kind of our base material that we've already created inside of Painter. So that's going to be our base material. So with this node, we need to come over our channels, and we need to set this up, because right now it has both specular gloss and metal rough all enabled by default. We don't need all that. So let's turn off this diffuse. We're not using that. Let's keep base color. Let's turn off normal. Let's turn off specular. Turn off glossiness. Let's keep roughness and metallic on, and we don't really care about this ambient occlusion for now. Let's leave it all like this. So now we have that set up. Let's grab our material. Again, this is our base material that we've painted in Painter, and we're going to plug this guy in right here. Now, when I have this node selected, let's just roll up the channels here. Notice that for the channels that I have enabled, we have controls for those channels. So this node is going to allow us to create a new material. So we can do that here by just changing these settings. So in our case, I'm going to set this up like it's a metal. So what I would do here is I would just come over to my color editor and I would choose a value that's going to represent kind of the metal reflectance. Now let me show you a cool trick for doing that. If we just come over here to our library and let me grab, where is it? Material filters, PBR utilities. There's a node in here called PBR metal reflectance. So if we just bring this guy in, it just gives you a nice drop down of all these different metal values here. And let's just say that I want to make, I just want to use cobalt. So this is giving me this value. If I hit this I button here, you can see if I sample this, I can see the RGB and float values for this. Also, I can just come over here and grab this pick, and I'm just going to come over and just sample this color right here. All right, so notice that set the values for me. So I just use this guy as a quick way to sample PBR metal reflectance values that I know are correct because they're derived from these scientifically measured values. So that's going to be you know, what we need here. So now that we have that in place, we're going to grab our metal edgeware, which is our mask, and we're going to plug this here into the mask. All right, so we'll double click. Let me just close this window down here. Yeah, see a couple reports there about a few drops. Yeah, I'm just checking my bandwidth. I think it might just be a slight bandwidth issue. Also, just to let you know that I am recording these as well, so they are archived on our Twitch, but I'm also uploading them to our YouTube. Just today I created a new playlist in our algorithmic channel for the Twitch live training streams. And so last week's is on there already, and today's will be up as well. Well, it'll be up today. I'm going to do it right after this. So if it's not like real smooth right now, don't worry. We'll have a full 1080p version up on the YouTube channel as well later today. Okay, so like I said here, you're kind of seeing how this blending is working. So we don't need this node anymore. Let's get rid of this guy. So here's our base material from Painter. We're using a mask. That mask is being derived from this normal information that we're painting. So now we don't need that. Let's just come in here and do this, like this. So like I said, that mask is being generated from the stroke, basically, that we're creating inside of Painter. And we're blending, again, like I said, that base material in Painter, we're blending it based on these settings that we're placing here, so we don't need to worry about our normal. Our roughness, we're setting this all the way up. Metallic in this case, since we want this to be a metal, let's set it all the way to metal. Now what I'm going to do here at the end is I'm going to expose these values. We'll talk about that later, but for now I know that I've set the metal reflectance value properly. I've come over here to my metallic and I've set it to be full white, so we know that that's a metallic that we've created. So now that we have that, we can just take the output of this material and just plug it straight into our final output. So remember, this is going to be what the filter outputs back to the Substance Painter layer stack. So here's what we have so far. Now, there's a couple things that we need to do. I'm going to leave these nodes out here. We're going to use these guys in just a minute just to demonstrate, or just to illustrate another principle here. So there's another thing that we need to kind of do to set this up. And here's where, you know, in my opinion, it gets a little confusing. So right now, you can see that if we look here at our base color, because of that mask, if I just double click this guy, and right now in the viewport, you have your RGB channels. Right next to that's our alpha. So right now, if I click this guy, I can enable the alpha view. So now I'm able to see some transparency. So what I'm having here is, or you can see that because of the mask that we're using here in our material color blend, where we're blending our layer stack with our new material here in the filter, we've got transparency here for our base color, and that's great because, you know, all we're really doing is just overlaying one material over top of the material in our Substance Painter layer stack. But we run into an issue when it comes to roughness and metallic. So let's use roughness as an example. So this is what we get right now so far in our mask. Now with grayscale values in Substance Painter, we don't have a method for supplying alpha information in the channels themselves. So like here in base color, it works like you know, ever use like a PNG format, And if you have transparency information, the red, green, and blue channels are going to have that transparency information, so you can actually see it like this. And you could just simply take that and just lay it over top of something else, and it works. But we can't have transparency in this grayscale channel. It doesn't work that way. So notice here in the roughness, well, all the white areas are going to be are going to be rough, so they're actually going to be whatever value. Let me just show you. Let me illustrate that by coming back over to our roughness. It's going to be these values. If I made them like really dark, see how that's working? Now, what that's doing is you can see here in the background that everywhere this mask is not denoting rough information, we have this black area. Now, when we apply that in Substance Painter back to our layer stack, it's going to take this black information in terms of roughness would be really, really shiny. So it's going to just take, the roughness is going to be set correctly for that material, that damage layer that we're putting over top of our material, but then it's going to overwrite the roughness that we have in Painter. Let me just jump back over here to Painter. Notice this base layer here on my roughness, it actually has this grunge map here, and it's going to overwrite that with just pure black, which means everything's going to be super, super shiny. We don't want that. But we have that problem is that, well, we can't get any transparency into that. So in order to do that, we have to use a little bit of a different setup, and let me show you how that works. So we need some more inputs and outputs to get this guy to work out for us. So let's do that now. Let me hit the space bar, and I'm going to start to type in input. Now, we're working with grayscale information at this point, so I need input grayscale. And we need to create a new usage. So I'm going to click this add item button, and I'm going to create a new usage. Now, if we click this drop down, this usage that I'm about to create, you will not see it here. Well, you do in my case. It's right here. It's roughness_alpha. Let me explain what I mean by that. So let's just remove that guy. So let's just say if you were following along with me right now and I said we need to place a new usage called roughness_alpha. You'd click this drop down and you'd move through here and you wouldn't see it. What you can do is you can actually come over to this drop down and it turns into kind of like this I-beam cursor. You can click in here and now we can actually type something. So you can type any usage you want. Like I could give myself the Wes usage, and so look at this. I have my own Substance Designer usage if I wanted to. It's not going to do anything, but it's there. You can type this in and it's going to show up. Once you type a usage in like that for the project or your substance, it's always going to be available in these drop downs. So notice that now there's always this Wes drop down here, or this Wes usage in the drop down list. So what we need is this one called roughness_alpha. And like I said, all I did was I just came in here to start, clicked, and actually typed this value in. Now, the value that I'm typing has to be very specific. So notice it says roughness underscore and alpha with a capital A. So it has to have that capital A. So this here, and here's another thing. I can just come in and copy this guy. So let's just copy it, Control C, come over to our identifier, and just paste it in there. So now we have roughness alpha. Okay, this is going to allow us to work with alpha information. Now we need to do the same thing again. So let's hit the space bar and let's do output. Now we have an output, and let's come over to our usage item. Now again, like I said, I'm already going to have it here in my list because I've already typed it in, but I'm just going to scroll down here and roughness alpha. So we'll use that. We'll come back over here to our output identifier and we'll paste in roughness alpha. So now we have an input roughness alpha and an output roughness alpha. And we need to work with these guys. All right, so how do we do this? How do we work with these guys? Okay, so one of the things that we're going to need to do is I'm going to hit the space bar and I'm going to add a blend node. So we need to add a blend node into here. And the way this works, let me just think about the setup for it. Let me see how I did it before, actually. Let me just jump back over here to my first example and let me just remember how I did it before. Yeah, pull these guys in. Okay, yep, that's right. Like I said, it gets confusing, so I forget how I did it. So here's my roughness input. This is going to be alpha information from the stroke. So if we go back over here to Painter, you'll notice that, as I start to paint this stroke, it has alpha. Look at the normal here. There's this alpha here. And well, we're not using any roughness, so there isn't any roughness. But what we can do in that case is we can still, Substance Painter is still aware of this roughness underscore alpha channel system. So we're going to take the input of that alpha and we're going to plug it right here into our foreground. And again, it's not letting me connect it because I was in compact material mode, so I'm going to come in and just do this. And then I want to grab the actual information that I have here from this roughness and plug this here into the background. Okay, so this is where it gets a little confusing. Why am I doing this? The reason is I cannot just come in here and do what you would think. So you would assume that you could just do this, that you could just, let's get rid of this connection here, and you could say, hey, I want to take this roughness underscore alpha input and I want to just plug it straight to the output. The problem is, since that data is not actually being, doesn't actually exist, Substance Painter is just going to, when it utilizes, or when it starts to utilize this filter inside, it's just going to just throw out this information. It's just going to throw it completely out. And the reason is because there's no input data coming into that. And we're going to actually supply it with some data, but we need the data to come from the inputs as well. And this input doesn't even have any alpha. So that's a problem. So a workaround to kind of trick the system is to do this. So we're going to take this input and plug it in here. And again, I told you it's kind of confusing. Let me just double check the way I have it. Yep, that's right. And then I come in and I set that to 0. All right. So opacity, we're going to pull this to 0. So basically, we need to make sure that we have these nodes. This guy's not actually doing anything, okay? It just has to be there, and that's kind of counterintuitive, and that's the confusing part about it. It's not doing anything. But this is doing something. This is giving us roughness information. So what we're doing is we're just piping this guy down into here, and we're just setting this opacity to 0, which means it's just going to grab the foreground. Here, I'll show you what that means, in case you're kind of new here to Designer and how this works. Let's grab a color like this green, and let me just demonstrate it real quick. I'm sorry about that because it's just a kind of a confusing concept in these filter systems and how we have this. All right, so we're blending these two guys together, okay? This is foreground over background. Notice that the foreground is always first, so we see the orange. If we drop this opacity to 0, that means that this node's only going to show us the background, okay? So let's grab these guys and get rid of it. So even though we have this input, it's not really, doing anything for us. So it's going into the foreground. The roughness is coming into the background, and then we set this basically to 0. What this means is that this node is showing us only this rough information that we're actually working with, that we're compositing. So now that we have that, we can then take this guy and just plug it actually to here. So that's the confusing part about it. We kind of have to do this kind of bypass system here, because this guy has to be in the system. He has to be in the equation, so to speak. But if he just passes straight through without having that data through there, it's not going to do anything. So we have to kind of work it this way. That's the terrible part about it. You would think, again, I could just take this roughness and plug it right into here, but it's just not going to work unless we do it kind of this convoluted way. Okay, so the bad part about it is we got to do this again. So let's come in and do input grayscale, and let's make a quick output here. So we got these two guys. This guy here, we need to add a usage. This, since I've already have it, we can just scroll through. This is going to be my metallic alpha. Let's copy it. Let's paste it here into the identifier. So here we go. Let's grab this blend node, and we'll just quickly copy and paste it. Let's take our metallic, throw that here into the foreground. Here, I'll just move this up so I can zoom in so you can see the actual connection I'm making. Let's grab our metallic now, throw him into the background. And let's get this guy set. Okay, so now we have this output. We need to add a usage. Again, we're just going to grab that. You know what I could do? Since I've copied it, let's just paste it in here. Oh, actually, I can't do that. All right, we have to set it this way, but we can paste it here in our identifier. You know what? I didn't have it copied again. I don't know what happened there. So that probably would have worked the first time. Okay, there we go. So we have everything set up, and boom, output that guy. All right, so this right here is the gnarly part of the training. I know that's confusing. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but you just have to set it up that way. All right, let's see. A couple questions came in. Oh yeah, the voice, that's me. I do the YouTube training stuff. I was not at this year's FMX. Okay, so one other question: could you use the same black color for both of the blend nodes? Are you in that question? I think what you're asking here is looking at these nodes as the two black nodes. So again, this stream's kind of delayed, so I'm not sure how that's coming in, but this isn't actually a color. This is going to be their input nodes. So it's just showing black because there's nothing there, but it's not actually just like a color. It's just input. That's from Substance Painter's layer stack. So to answer that question, no, you could not. It has to be very specific metal_alpha with a capital A and roughness_alpha with a capital A. So it has to kind of be set up this way. All right, so far we kind of have this in place, and I think we kind of have our filter set. Let me see how we're doing here on time. Okay, so there was one part of this that I didn't do yet, and I did that on purpose, and I forgot what it was. Oh yeah, okay. I'm going to leave it like this, kind of half done on purpose, and we're going to go ahead and export and check out what we did, and I'm going to show you a problem that's going to show up and how we fix it. So let's just save this guy here on the desktop, and we'll save the SBSAR file. Okay. All right, let's jump back over to Designer here, or excuse me, Painter. I keep getting these two confused. Let's come over and just create a new project. So let's just set this guy up from scratch too. So here, like I said, I'm using, yes, it will. One question just came in asking, is the presentation, yeah, I'm recording it, and it'll be up on YouTube later today on our channel. We actually have a new playlist for all the Twitch training sessions. So all these guys are going to be archived. So here, we're going to just create a new project. I need a mesh, so here I just have this plane that I'm going to use, and we'll click OK. Alright, so now we have this plane here. And let's just set this guy up. So first, like I said, I'm going to do a fill layer. My metallic value is all the way to 0 because I'm going to pretend this is like a dielectric material. And then here for my base color, let's just set something, you know, maybe like this kind of orange, something like this. There we go. And then we have like this roughness value. One of the things I like to do is, instead of just having this as a uniform value, I'm going to click this roughness button, and I'm just going to scroll down through here and look for a grunge map, and here it is. This is a grunge map. Grunge scratches dirty. The thumbnail is actually loading up here. I don't know why it's taking so long, but I'll just click it anyways. There it goes. As soon as I get ready to hover away. There you go. So you can get an idea of what it is. This is a really awesome scratches for map for doing roughness stuff. So, you know, I love it. I use it a lot. This is a good one. So I'm just going to use this guy here. And if I just move my light around so we can really see what that's doing, it gives a really nice break up there on our roughness. So this here is our base. Okay, so now we're going to create a standard layer, and one of the questions that came back really early on in the stream was, hey, can you show me how to set up that brush? So here we're going to do that now. So here I'm going to come back to my material, and for this brush, the idea is that I want to create just a brush to paint normal information. So because of that, I'm going to turn off all these channels here, and I'm just going to have normal. And I'm going to come over to my textures, and I'm going to grab just one of these guys. This one here is good. And I'm just going to pull this guy into place. And then I can come over here to my alpha, and that's really all you need to do. So here I'm just increasing my brush size, and I could come in and I could just stamp this down, and now I have this. One of the things that I said early on was you have this hardness value. It acts kind of like a radial fade, so here I can use it in real time. Notice that if the hardness is all the way up, we can see basically the full of the texture that we're using for that normal. If I move it down, you can see that I can basically feather the edges to that. That could be useful, it could not. It just depends on the actual texture that you're using. In this case, since this is a circle, this is going to work for me. So we'll move this guy here. And now I can just stamp this down and I get this information. So now let's come over here to our filters and let's import our filter. So a really good way to import items here into the shelf. And one of the things I'll mention here in the stream, we actually are going to be reworking the shelf. So the shelf's cool, it's okay, but there's a lot of organizational issues that we have with the shelf as it currently exists. And one of the things that we're going to be working on in one of the upcoming releases to Substance Painter is we're reorganizing this shelf. So there's going to be a lot of really nice new features about working with the shelf that allows us to kind of organize assets, and it's going to be a lot nicer. So the reason why I'm kind of going through that now is because I just want to show you how you can kind of work around some of the issues. So one of the thing is, if you came over here and you could say import resource, and you could import in like a substance or a texture or whatever. And when you do that, let's say I import a texture. It's going to show up in every one of these tabs if I just import a resource. And you don't want that. See, you can see it happening here. So, well, that's just a texture. We come over to generate. So far in this, since this is a blank project, everybody's cool. Everybody's, everybody's where they need to be. But if I just started, using file, import resource, and bringing stuff in, they would go into all these different tabs. And I, for one, really hate that. So what you can do, though, is you can utilize this drag and drop stuff. So if we come over here, here I'm just on my desktop and then on my second monitor. And I'm just grabbing this guy here. Where is it? Where's the one that I just did? Filter example. Okay, so here's my SBSAR file. I can just drag it right here onto this filters tab. I get a little pop-up and ask me what do I want to do with this guy. Do I want to use it for the current session only? Do I want to, place it here into my kind of library shelf that's going to be there in every single project I create? Or do I want it in this particular project? So in my case, I'm going to choose the middle option here. I just want to place this filter in this specific project. So I do that, and here we go. Notice now that my little resource guy is only in the filters tab, so he's not going to show up anywhere else, which is nice and keeps things organized. So that's kind of a tip for organization in the current implementation of the shelf. Okay, so now I've got my filter. I want to apply that filter. So here's my layer. This is what we just painted. So remember, here's our input. In our case, it's just a single fill layer. We've painted a stroke. Now I'm going to click this button and I'm going to add a filter. And I can click this button and I can add my filter. So let's add it. Oops, I didn't click it. Whoops, something's happening over here. Sorry about that. Hold on just a second. I'm getting this showing up on my second monitor for some reason. Let me see here. Close that out. Here, drag this guy over. Oh, I must have something wrong here in my substance. Let me check that. Looks like it's not coming in correctly for me. Let's see. I have made a mistake somewhere, it looks like. Let me just check through and see what I have here. So let's look at our outputs. Let's say we've got our outputs correct. And we've got our normal. Here's our roughness alpha. So we have this guy all set up like he's supposed to be. Let me check my first one. What did I do here? Oh, I didn't do that guy, but we'll worry about that in a little bit. Oh, it should be working. Let me check this again here. All right, let me jump back over to Painter and let's see what I did here. It doesn't look like there's anything wrong with it. It should be exactly the same. Alright, here's this guy here. Ah, that's really strange. What is it doing here? Alright, sorry about this, guys. That's kind of weird. It should be working just fine. Because I don't have anything going on. Let me make sure once more here. Everything should be good. Just checking my channels here. So yeah, this is a good, these kind of things happen, so it's kind of good to go through and just kind of look at what we're doing here. What could have possibly have gone wrong with that? Input color. I think this is the problem right here. Okay, so I knew it was something stupid. Okay, so notice here that, that wasn't working, and it's actually kind of good when things like that happen, because, I mean, I always like it, that way, you can kind of see somebody work through the problem, because, you watch the training, and then, sure enough, every time I've watched a lot of training, as soon as I try it on my own, it never works, like I saw it in the video, so it's kind of nice to see, some mistakes. So anyways, like I said here, one of the ways I troubleshoot that, okay, so I knew that, okay, it's not letting me take the filter as an input. So that was making me think, okay, I need to check my inputs and my outputs. And I was thinking that, okay, one of these inputs has to go awry. So one of the ways I did that was I just double click out here in an empty spot, and I'm looking at my inputs, and I'm looking, and boom, right here I could see, oh wait, this guy has no usage. So remember when I created that input that was going to stand in for my normal, it doesn't have anything. So I need to come over here and set this guy to normal. And I thought I did that, but I guess I didn't. So let's set that identifier to normal. So normal, and let's make sure this guy is, yeah, no, I guess I did it for the output and not the input. There we go. All right, so now let's republish this guy again. Let's replace the original one that we did. Jumping back over here to Painter. Here, I want to get rid of these guys, so let's just go to File and Clean. So notice they're gone. And let's go back and grab this guy again and bring him in. Okay, so now we have our filter. Let's drag and drop and place him on here. And now our filter works. Now, I just wanted to show you this because we got a couple problems here. So notice that the filter is just taking control of everything, okay? And it's also putting a bunch of height information on here, which I don't want. So I'm seeing a couple different issues that I need to work through. So let's take a look at this. So what we're going to do is first we need to worry about, our grunge effect is happening over top of everything. Okay, and that's not good. So let's take a look at how we need to fix that. Now, first thing I want to do is I want to come over. Let me go back into here and let me just, whoops. Let me just hit undo a couple times. I want to get my little tester nodes back. And let's make sure that I set this normal. So we'll grab this guy, and again, I'm just kind of redoing this. There we go. Okay, so let me take this and just plug this here into my generator, just so I could see some information here. Now, the first thing that's the easiest thing to fix is that height was everywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit 1 on the keyboard to expand on my channels here, and I'm going to come into my height and look at my height. Now, we have this height information. I actually don't want that to happen, okay? So, because you saw we don't want that height. You might, but in my case, I don't want the height information. So I'm going to come over here to height, and I'm going to set the opacity to this guy all the way to 0. Okay, so notice now that we're just getting this gray value of height. Now, if I hit the I button here and I sample this guy, you can see that it's just giving me this 64 value here. So in this case, we don't want any height information. And let me double check again and make sure this guy's okay. So we took the height from this channel input and it came into here, and we're just basically outputting it. We don't want any, okay, so this is correct. All right, so we took care of our height information there. Now we need to take care of the problem that we're getting where our grunge effect, our damage effect, is happening over top of the entire everything that we're doing, all the textures, and that's bad. So here I can go ahead and just plug our input normal back into these guys. Let's see. It's already in. Okay, let's put this guy here. Now, there's a really easy way to do this. On all of the generators that we work with, they have an optional mask input. And so we need to make a mask input, okay? So making that, supplying that or masking that generator is easy enough. It just takes a mask input. But now we just need to think about how are we going to create that mask. So let's look at what we have. So here we have our input, and we know it's a normal map, okay? And in this example, this is kind of what we're getting here. This is what's going to be generated for us. So it's going to have like transparency here in the RGB channel. So I think we can use that. So here's a trick that I do. I'm going to hit the space bar, and I'm going to search for RGB, and then here we have RGBA split. Okay, we're going to use this node. So let's make an instance of this guy. Let's plug our normal in. So here we have our normal. We're viewing our RGB normal. Let's hit the let's look at our alpha, and boom, there we have an alpha. Now, one of the things I want to make a change with, well, here, let me explain this first. This right here is just going to give us an alpha that's going to be fine. Now, we have this kind of whole area, and we have some gray information here, and that could help us. It could give us a little bit of kind of feathering basically when we're mixing the two materials and everything. So that's probably okay. But in this particular case of this alpha, it basically has like a hole right here in the middle, and I don't actually want that. So one of the things I'm going to do just to kind of demonstrate this, because most of the alphas that you work with probably won't be like this, a complete hole in the middle. So just to kind of fix that, I'm just going to add a levels here to this guy, and I'm going to take my output black and just move it up. So I get, this is probably more of what you would see. So notice that we've got like this little indentation here, but it's not black, so it's not going to make a hole when we use this as a stamp. It's just going to kind of bevel down into the asset. And this is kind of what you're going to more commonly see. So now we have something like this. Let's look at what happens when we have it more of an actual real-world example in our alpha. We get something like this with this gray in here, and that's not giving us the best kind of alpha. So what I do is I just add a levels, and we'll pull this guy into place, and then I'm going to take my input white, and I'm just going to pull it like this until it just clamps it. Okay, so I'm just going to clamp it a little bit. And what I found is that I can keep this, and this setting can be pretty global to any of the maps I've been using with this. So I'm just going to keep this at like this here. Okay, so that's going to work for basically anything that I'm using. So let's grab these two guys, and now let's do this. Let's make sure we're in, notice right there it did make the connection, so again I had to jump to standard mode. We no longer need these guys, so I'm just going to get rid of them. And I know that this is going to generate that mask for me. So now let's take that mask and plug it right here into the mask input of our metal edgeware generator. Okay, so now we've got that mask going. So this is pretty much going to create the effect that we need. Now let's start to expose a couple options here. So I'm going to come over to my metal edgeware because I want to be able to work with these sliders in Painter, and I'm going to work with pretty much all of them. So I'm just going to come over to this guy here, and I'm going to hit expose. Actually no, let's do it like this. You can expose these per parameter basically, and when you have a lot like this it's kind of a pain. Or you can do it this way. So let's click this button here and choose expose parameters, and it's going to give us this nice kind of pop-up window here that's going to allow us to kind of globally do this. So for wear level, I want that. I want wear contrast, edge smoothness, grunge amount, grunge scale, ambient occlusion, masking, and curvature weight. So these are the ones I care about. Now just to keep things organized and nice and pretty looking here, user interface wise in Painter, I'm going to give a group to these guys. So I'm going to call this damage, and let's just copy this and let's just paste it down into for all these guys. So basically this group parameter is going to allow me to group all these guys. Alright, so now that I have this set up, I'll click OK, And all those guys are basically been promoted to the root level of the graph. So if I just double click an empty spot here out here in the graph, it's going to take me to that root level. Now here's my input parameters. So another cool trick, if you want to preview these guys, so if I click this drop down, I can make adjustments if I want to test, but it's kind of annoying to do it this way. I can click this button, no, I'm sorry, the second one, and nope, I'm wrong again. You just click this button once and you're in preview mode. And I'm sorry, I was actually looking at the wrong thing. So notice there, all my parameters got closed up to damage. So when I gave that damage group, basically it took all those parameters and put them in this nice little damage grouping here. So that's pretty cool that you can do that. So let's say I made a few changes, like something like, say, like this, and I like that, and I go out of preview mode. It's going to ask me, do I want to apply these values as default? And yes, I do. So it just gives you kind of a nice way to kind of work with the UI. Okay, one question that came in: am I creating the alpha in Substance Designer? No, I'm not doing that. That alpha is actually coming from Substance Painter when we basically hear from the normal here, because there's alpha in that channel. So you can see this is where it's coming from. Okay, so here in Designer we expose this guy. Let's come back over here to our material color and let's expose some of these guys. So base color, here, let's do the same thing. Let's expose parameters. This one's kind of a pain because there's a ton of them. So we don't want to do channels. Okay, for base color, we want just the color. We don't want any normal, specular, roughness, color. Metallic, we want metallic. I think that's it. That's all we want. Just double checking here. Which one did I do? Roughness. Okay, so you can see the group input. It's automatically adding something here. I don't want this. So what I'm going to do here is just call this material. So let's copy this guy. Let's paste it and let's paste it. All right. So we have this in place here. Oh, it's not letting me do that. What's going on? Oh, okay, I got a problem here. Doesn't like that. Alright, hold on just a second. So what's happening is it doesn't like the naming that it's giving automatically, so I need to change that. So let me just... This one's kind of a pain because you have all these parameters. Let's look at... See, it doesn't like any of this stuff. Okay. Now, here... Here's a good example. This is good. This happened too. Okay, so let me show you. This has burned me more times than I can count. Okay, let's go to metallic. So sometimes when you go in and you expose a parameter, so let's say you come over here and you use this option here and you just expose a parameter, and a little window pops up and it tries to default a name. And in this particular case, this parameter was called color. And you'll notice that a lot of times when you expose parameters, you'll find that Substance Designer will try to do what it's doing right here, and it'll just use the same value sometimes, like it just did. And when that happens, either it's going to overwrite it, and you'll end up losing a parameter, or you'll replace a parameter with a different name, or you'll get in a situation like this where it won't even let you create the parameters. So for base color, what I want to do for this is just going to be, well... I don't want it to be metal reflectance, because the way that we're going to switch this is it could be metal. If you set this all the way to 100% metal, then it could, or it could be dielectric. So let's just call this, let's just call it albedo. Okay, so now we've got a green check mark, meaning that that's going to work for us. This guy here, well, we will call this roughness. All right, so now that's going to work. Now notice that material color, since it's green again because it's the only one here in the input identifier name. So we don't want that. I just want to call this metallic. I don't know why it tried to overwrite what it was doing, but it does that sometimes, so just be careful. So we'll click OK, and here we'll go double click. We'll come out and see, here's the ones that it tried to create, and it's giving me these warnings. It just messed everything up. I think it did. What is this thing doing? It should be fine. Let's check them again here. See what it did? Sometimes in that window, it'll get you because you've got these two options you got to worry about. You've got identifier and label. So this warning is telling me that that green check mark that we had, meaning, hey, we're good to go, meant that the identifiers were unique, but we still have this issue with our labels all named color. We don't want that. So let's set this up. See, I tried to be fast and use the big export parameters window. I should have just manually done it right off the bat. So, okay, albedo. Let's come down and change this guy to roughness. Still not liking what I'm doing here. Okay, metallic. It should be fine. Placing, I think what I did, I just messed this up. Guys, I'm sorry. Let me just redo this. I think I was actually putting information in the wrong thing altogether. So let me just clear this guy on the base. Sorry. Okay, so I think what I did, and you probably noticed it, there was a visible, I think I was putting the information wrong in the visible if or whatever. So here for this guy, let's just keep this input name, base color. Let's just do that. And let's come over here to roughness. Roughness color. Do that. And metallic. Okay, so while we're doing that, one question. What's the difference between the label and the identifier? The identifier is actually, here, let me go out and take a look at the one I have here. The identifier, this is very specific to integrations. So like, when I say integrations, I mean like any application that's using the Substance plugin and it automatically takes a Substance output and hooks it up to a material. It utilizes this identifier to do that. You know, it needs to be unique and that usage. So it depends on how it's set up. Most of the integrations use the usage standpoint, but the identifier in our case is actually used if in the actual function itself. Here, let me just demonstrate that a little bit better. So, okay, notice the identifier here is called base color. Let's go back over to this guy and let's go to base color. Now, this has been, we can't edit this anymore, right? But we can actually click this button and this will take us into the actual function graph itself. And what this has done is it's using this get float variable. So if I hit spacebar and I start to type in get, I could get, you know, some type of float, integer, whatever I'm working with. If we look at this guy, notice that it's set to base underscore color. So whenever you're trying to reference like a variable here within the function graph, it needs to utilize that identifier name. The usage is what is actually used by the integrations. So I was wrong when I said that the first way. The label itself is just user interface. It means it's just, you know, just when you actually have the parameter exposed in the host application, it's just the friendly user interface name that you see. Okay, so now let's give these guys a nice group of material. And I'll copy this, and we'll call this guy albedo. And for group, we're going to paste this guy, and this will be roughness. And the group is material, and the label is metallic. I think what I did on one of the columns, when I did that expose the big parameter window, one of the columns, I think I was actually editing the visible if by accident. So that's why I was getting that problem, because it was basically saying there's an error in the expression I'm using in visible if. That's what was happening there. So I'm sorry about that. So now, after all that trouble, we get all that trouble just so that we could have two nice little groups like this. But it's worth it, you know, because it looks good once we get it in Painter. Okay, so there, we have that in place. Now, there's something else that we want to do, and I'm sorry, guys, the time I'm looking at this. I'm doing another hour-and-a-half stream. I was trying to keep it at an hour, but I end up rambling on as I talk, so sorry about that. Okay, one of the other cool things that we want to do with this is we want to be able to work with ambient occlusion. So real quick, what I want to do is I'm going to hit my space bar and I'm going to do another output here. And for the usage, I'm going to grab ambient occlusion. And what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste it like this so we make sure that everybody's, set up correctly. And I'm already generating ambient occlusion here, so let's just grab it and paste it right into here like that. So we're just going to output that ambient occlusion. Okay, so I think we've taken care of all the problems that we had before, so let's save and let's publish this guy. And we'll just replace what we had. Click OK. And there we go. So now let's jump back over to, will you be, one other question, will you post the, yes, what I'll do is when this actually gets uploaded to YouTube, check the description. There's going to be a forum link. And in the forum link, I have a section for the Twitch streams. And each time I have demo files like this, I'm just going to add them there. So just check the description in the YouTube video, and you'll be able to grab the substance that way. All right, let's go back over to Designer here, Painter. And now that I've saved that and this has been imported into our project, I can actually just right-click and just reload this guy. So reload, I just kind of let it generate so I know that it's doing something. All right, so notice that nothing changed. We actually need to come over here to our filter. It's telling me that it's outdated, but we need to just simply drag and drop and place it here. And so now you can see that, we're starting to get basically, our damage. So we can adjust our wear level. We can adjust our grunge amount. And we can come into our material now. And we can change our albedo value. So say we wanted this to be a metal. Let's pull this all the way up to metal. And here I'm just going to kind of guess a metal reflectance value. I know it needs to be, something kind of a high value like this. And we'll come back over. And I think I'm having a problem here with my curvature, actually. Let me check my ambient occlusion. Okay, the ambient occlusion masking is working. Let me just check my curvature here. The intensity on the curvature is actually pretty low. So this could be another thing that I need to go in and expose. So I give myself like a utilities section. Let me just do it while we're here. Let's expose this guy, and let's call this new curve underscore intensity. So that's going to be our identifier name. Let's go back to here. For the default, let's set it to something high, like maybe, I don't know, 10. And the maximum, let's set it to something like maybe 20. Let's do that. And for the group, I'm going to just call this settings. So we have a little settings group. Something else that you can do in case you didn't know, you can actually drag and drop these guys if you want to sort them. So like, let's just say that I did this and I want my settings to be at the very bottom. I could actually just drag and drop that group all the way to the bottom. It's kind of nice if you need to organize what you have. All right, so let's save and let's republish. Let's place this guy here. And there we go. We don't have a progress bar for the publish, so one of the things I just try to toggle the viewport until it kind of, becomes responsive again. All right, we'll come back. Let's right-click. Let's reload. So this guy's reloaded, and then we're just going to drag and drop him to replace him. So now you can see it's working, but it's way too high, so let's adjust our curvature. All right, let's go back to my damage and decrease my wear level and my grunge amount. Let's go back to maybe my material. Let's set this guy to metallic, and let's just set the reflectance value here a little bit lower like this. And for our roughness, it's all the way at 1. Let's drop it down, something like maybe this. Okay, so there we go. So I could tell that the curvature intensity wasn't really enough of an effect to give me what I needed there. So now you can see that we fixed a lot of those problems that we had. Let's move our lighting around here. So, we were able to generate that mask for our generator. So we fixed it here. Let me jump over to Designer. What did we do? We generated that mask. We did that using the RGBA split node, and we plugged that here into our mask generator. we came over here to our material color blend, and it was utilizing height information, which we didn't really want to do, so I set this to low. Now again, maybe you do want it to do that, so what you could do is set this height value up. You could expose the range, so maybe you want it to go black, so it like basically these damage marks like kind of dig into the surface. You could do that if you wanted to. I just left it to 0. And I added ambient occlusion, but we haven't demoed that yet, so let me show you how that works. And then we exposed our parameters, which took me like 30 minutes to do. So now that we have that in place, let's go back, and so here's our cool effect that we have. Now, like I said before, we were working with ambient occlusion information, but we don't see it. If I come over here to my channels, in my channel list, I don't have ambient occlusion. So I'm going to click this button here, and I'm going to choose ambient occlusion. Now, as soon as I do that, you could see that we get this cool ambient occlusion information in here. Let me do one more thing. Let me go back to my ambient occlusion, and let me expose this guy. AO underscore spreading. So this would be a new thing that I would then just set as part of my group of settings. Boom. AO spreading. Now, for my colors, let's just set some of this stuff up real quick. So roughness, I want it to be like this. I want it to be metallic by default. So I'm just setting up some presets right now. And for my color, I'm just going to hit HSV. I'm going to leave it at white. I'm just dropping this value. So just real quick note on that. Basically, little PBR lesson. What I'm doing is I'm working at the metal reflectance value. That metal reflectance with PBR is going to need to be in a specular range of like 70 to 100%. So that's why I know that I don't have the exact color value. It's more like it's kind of white, but I just dropping the value down a little bit, but it's still this value is still going to represent that 70, at least 70% reflective range. So I know that's going to work for me. So we'll hit save. We'll publish this guy once more. Let's put this here in our example. And there we go. Guy published. Let's go back over to designer, and I can reload this guy. And let's add him. And we'll just decrease our damage here a little bit. You know what? That curvature setting was way too high by default, so let's do something like this. Okay, so now I've got this nice AO spreading. So notice here I can adjust this and how the AO is working. So now I get AO built into that as well as I start to stamp this information in. So let's go back over here to our textures. Let's grab a new guy. Here, let's grab this guy and plug him in. And we'll stamp this down. Boom. Now I get the cool effect with all that information. I've got some really nice kind of AO happening in here. We can go back to our filter. We can adjust kind of like our AO spread. See, here it is without AO at all. And here's our AO. We can make changes to our material. We can make changes to our actual damage effect that we have, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, here we go. This is what we have, and that is covers the entire process for creating our own substance filter here. That's going to allow us to create these damage effects as we paint stroke detail in. So like I said, I have recorded this. This is going to be archived on our Twitch channel, so you can always watch it there. And then also, this video is going to be live on our YouTube. We've got a new YouTube channel playlist where I'm keeping all these these live training sessions. I'm actually going to have that uploaded today, so look for that if you want. And this substance, I'm actually going to have the project source file. It's going to be linked back to a forum thread. In the YouTube description video, you'll see the link there, and you can grab it that way. So I just want to thank everybody for joining and appreciate your time. Look forward to the next session. Again, go back to our forum thread in our Twitch stream. If there's anything kind of specific or something you're interested in, like to see covered, just kind of post there in that thread. I'll check it and see if we can incorporate some of those questions into our training sessions as well. So thanks a lot, everybody. Have a good rest of the week, and I'll see you on the next stream.